Hello everyone and welcome back. Time now to get to your questions about the juvenile justice system. Our guest is attorney Tim Webre, and we want to thank you so much for contacting us through Facebook and Twitter. We have some really great questions, and so we're going to get straight to them. I mentioned earlier about a report that was recently released which looked at the mental health status of youngsters who are in the juvenile system. And our first question comes from Jennifer. She says, why is there a lack of mental care for children? And that report found that there are more children with mental health issues in the Louisiana juvenile justice system than in any other state. Are you surprised by that? I've seen it.
It's appalling. The problem we have is people are using the juvenile justice system instead of the mental health system. There's no logical reason for it. It's budget cuts. The Office of Children who should be receiving mental health treatment are ending up being arrested for whatever mental health problem they have, and you're ending up criminalizing being mentally ill. This has been going on for years. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed by more services in the community as opposed to putting them in prison and thinking a prison is going to solve someone's mental health problem.
Almost like a human rights issue. It's like
this
is a child who's obviously got health issues. It happens to be mental health versus physical health, and can't restrain his or her behavior. And instead of recognizing that, they're just treating them like a kid who steals a car or does something else that they should be able to.
Now,
they should treat it differently.
In the defense of the Office of Juvenile Justice, they do have mental health treatment in the facilities. They do. If you get locked up in the state facility, there are mental health units that they can treat the children. The sad thing is that the children shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah.
They should have been diverted out and had mental health services instead of being incarcerated.
Right. Earlier I mentioned the Louisiana model. We didn't really explain that, but when you talk about reform, here it's called the Louisiana model, but it's patterned after the Missouri model.
That's
Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
It is a more therapeutic model than a lock them up and throw away the key model. The idea is to have a child in as close to a home-like environment as possible instead of as close to a prison environment, an institutional environment.
Yeah, the reason is if you lock them up, you might as well throw away the key, because when you put a child in with other criminals, the child is basically learning how to become a criminal as opposed to learning how to address the issues that got the child into the criminal trouble in the first place. Right.
Back prior to the 2003 reforms, the system was called the Louisiana Training Institute. The only thing that I, from my experience, thought that these children were trained to do was to steal Dodge automobiles.
Wow.
That's awful.
But it makes sense. If you are a parent, you know, and if you ever were a teenager, which I was, you know. At that age, your friends, your peer group are the most important thing to you. You're trying to learn how to work your way through the world, and the people that you associate with become who you are.
Right.
You know, you assume their identity.
Right. We have another question here. It says, what will happen to my son's juvenile criminal record once he becomes an adult? Will his record affect his ability to find a job? It
shouldn't. Juvenile records are confidential. Also, they're not adult convictions. So if you're ever asked on a job application, have I ever been convicted of a crime? If you are a juvenile and you are adjudicated in juvenile court, not adult court, you can say no. You don't have the same rights in juvenile court as you do in adult court. You do not have the right to a jury trial. So if it is not a conviction for adult purposes, you don't have to worry about the habitual offender statute. They cannot take a juvenile crime and treat it as an adult crime. For those, the habitual offender statute is that 3 strikes, you're out.
Okay.
All right. It's not your first strike.
Okay.
You start over once you turn 17 years old and you go through the adult system.
So you get a clean slate. Provided you don't do anything that would send you to adult prison, you essentially get a clean slate, it sounds like. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Now, there's a limit to that. If you are applying for a top secret security clearance, this is going to come up. All right.
Okay.
There are limits to that, but your basic, and also if it's a sex crime, because you will have to register if it's a sex crime.
Okay.
But your basic run-of-the-mill property crime, you don't have to worry about that.
Tim, you brought a graphic that we want to pull up and show as we're talking about the juvenile crime rate here going down. School arrests have actually declined.
That's correct.
And we're going to pull that graphic up so that you can see it. And this takes us from 2008 to 2011. Talk a little bit about the numbers and what we're seeing there.
What we're seeing is the effort, one of the concerns in juvenile court is, we call it the school to prison pipeline. The schools trying to use the probation department and the juvenile court system as their discipline. All right, so if a child has a fight in school, instead of the school disciplining them, they call the sheriff's office and there's an arrest and the child has a record. We're trying to avoid that. We're trying to work with the schools, and you see, this is a graphic from the Children and Youth Planning Board in Jefferson.
Right.
What the Children and Youth Planning Board is, all of the actors get together. We have monthly meetings. The DAs, the sheriff's office, the judges, the public defenders, the mental health providers. We meet, we discuss, we yell at each other, and we try to come up with a plan to reduce juvenile crime in Jefferson. And it's been working. You know, this is something we have that is very cooperative that you do not see in the adult system. You don't see the judges and the DAs and the public defenders and the jailers and the security and mental health providers in the adult system sitting around a table yelling at each other and trying to work things out.
One of the things that they're finding in Missouri is that because of what they've implemented in the juvenile justice system, that it's having a direct impact on the adult system. Are we starting to see any of that here in Louisiana because of what we have in place?
I don't have those statistics, and I would suspect that we're not seeing it yet, but we will see it soon, because all of these children that are coming out of the system now are not going to be committing new crimes. They're learning how to be productive citizens, and you're going to see a drop in the crime rate. I would hope over the years, if this model maintains and still does what it's been doing now, we still see the progress, that we start seeing the adult system, especially for younger adults, 17-year-olds, start adopting this system.
And I can see the exponential effect of that. They're not only not committing crimes, they're contributing to the economy because they're holding down jobs, they're paying taxes, they're hopefully raising families and showing how that they got on the right path, off the wrong path. So it sounds very positive. Go ahead.
And it's going to increase, because one of the things you're seeing is, you know, I talked about the #1 indicator, that is length of time in detention. The #2 indicator is if you have a family member in prison. If your father or your mother's in prison, you're much more likely to go to prison. Just like if your father or your mother's a lawyer, you're much more likely to become a lawyer. What you'll see is these children do not go to prison, their children will not go to prison.
It's just a snowballing effect in a positive way. One thing I just want to mention real quick, in the juvenile justice system, kids that commit crimes that harm somebody else, you know, you start a fire, you steal somebody's car and you wreck it, you can subject your family members to civil liability. If little Johnny gets into a fight at school and he pushes a kid down the stairs, you know, if that child has parents and the parents have a homeowner's insurance policy, you can be sued for that too. Just a little cautionary note for people to also keep in mind. There's other ramifications besides facing criminal justice in the juvenile justice system.
It doesn't just affect the child. It could have a direct impact on the family.
And the family might be ordered to pay restitution. Normally, I take that back. Normally, children will not pay restitution because they're children. They're children. Okay. But there will be this liability.
Parents
and there
are
will
liable
be
for the acts of their children.
Yes, and there will be,
generally speaking, and if they have insurance policies like a homeowner's policy, that can be held accountable in certain occasions.
But there will be some restitution. The court is not going to expect a child to be able to pay $100,000 in restitution. But we'll expect some restitution to the victim.
Is there an average length of stay in a juvenile detention facility? That's another question from a viewer.
A juvenile detention facility. Juvenile court is different than adult court in our time frame. We are fast. A juvenile, once he's arrested, has to be brought in within 72 hours to the continued custody hearing. Adult, it's the same thing for the bond hearing. At this point, it changes. District Attorney's Office has 48 hours to file a petition to accept or refuse charges on that juvenile held in detention. An adult court, 60 days. Juvenile court, after that 48 hours, they must be brought in for answer, which is the equivalent of adult arraignment, within 15 days. Adult court, 30 days. At that point, it's set for trial. Juvenile court, if it's a crime and it's a property crime, it will be set for trial in 30 days. If it's a crime of violence, it has to be set within 60 days. Okay. Adult court, 120 days. The gist of it is, if you are a juvenile and you are arrested and it's not a crime of violence, you will be tried before the District Attorney's Office in an adult case has to even decide whether to accept charges or not.
So it does move very fast.
It moves fast.
It does, yeah.
Because the court is aware, and everyone is aware, the longer they're there, the worse they're going to be.
Well, I wish we had more time, Tim. We have certainly enjoyed it, learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope that you'll come back with us.
I would love to.
Right.
Anytime.
That is all the time that we have for this show. Please join us next week when we will delve into another important legal topic and some of the information that you need to know to protect your rights.
You can sign up for that mailing list online at johnredmannpoa.com or jrpoa.com, where you can also watch every episode of this show and get information about everything discussed on the show. Remember to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and send in your questions and comments by email. We'll see you next week on Power of Attorney.